Everything you know about the Delano Grape Strike is wrong, and I can prove it with one single date, September 8th, 1965. You've heard of César Chávez. Of course you have. There's a national monument for him, a postage stamp, 3 state holidays in America. In the Oval Office, President Biden keeps a bronze bust of Chávez right behind the Resolute desk. That's how important he is to America. Chávez is synonymous with farm worker rights, with the grape boycott, with the movement that changed American labor history forever, right? But here's what the history books don't tell you. The man who actually started the Delano Grape Strike was not César Chávez at all. The man who walked off the fields first, who organized the workers, who convinced Chávez to join when Chávez initially said no to him. His name was Larry Itliong, a Filipino immigrant with only 7 fingers and a cigar. You have probably never heard of him before today. This is his story, and this is why America forgot to tell it. Stay with me, because what comes next will change how you see history. Let's start with what everyone knows. César Chávez was born in Arizona in 1927. His family lost their farm during the Great Depression era. They became migrant workers, following harvests across California. Chávez experienced the brutal reality of farm labor from a very young age. In 1962, Chávez founded the National Farm Workers Association. His goal was organizing Mexican-American farm workers throughout California state. Chávez was a disciple of Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. He believed deeply in nonviolent resistance, in fasting, in peaceful marches. He was charismatic, soft-spoken, media-friendly. He had handlers and lawyers. He knew exactly how to work the press and shape narratives. In 1968, Chávez fasted for 25 days to recommit the movement to nonviolence. Robert Kennedy flew to California to break bread with him. The image was powerful, a humble man suffering for his people. The press loved it. America had found its farm worker hero in César Chávez. When the grape strike ended in victory in 1970, Chávez became a legend. He appeared on the cover of Time magazine, not once, but twice. After his death in 1993, honors poured in. A national monument in California, 8 schools named after him, even a United States Navy ship. Barack Obama made March 31st, Chávez's birthday, a commemorative federal holiday. César Chávez Day is now official in 3 states. And in 2021, President Biden placed a bronze bust of Chávez in the Oval Office, right behind the Resolute desk. That is the official story. That's the man America remembers, the face of the farm worker movement. But that story has a problem. It leaves someone very important out. It leaves out someone who was there from the very beginning. Someone who made the whole thing possible in the first place. Someone essential. Because when the Delano Grape Strike began on September 8th, 1965, César Chávez was not leading it. He was not even participating yet. In fact, when asked to join, Chávez said no. He told the organizers he needed 2 or 3 more years to prepare his own organization. The man who changed his mind, the man who walked off the fields first, the man who started one of the most important strikes in history, his name was Larry Itliong, and his story starts 36 years earlier on the other side of the Pacific Ocean in the Philippines. Modesto Dule Itliong was born in 1913 in San Nicolas, a small town in Pangasinan province. The Philippines was then a United States territory. He finished 6th grade. That was all his formal education. It ended before he became a teenager. But Itliong was a fighter from the start. In 1929, at just 15 years old, Larry Itliong boarded a ship to America. He had one dream: become a lawyer and defend the poor people. He later described his expectations, quote, You go to the United States where they pick money on trees. Did that happen? Hell no." End quote. America had different plans for young Filipinos. They were not welcome in schools. They were welcome in the fields, picking vegetables only. Itliong landed in Alaska first, working in salmon canneries. The work was brutal. 18-hour days, freezing conditions, dangerous machines. One day, an accident at the cannery cost him 3 fingers on his right hand. For the rest of his life, he would be known as 7 Fingers. But losing 3 fingers did not stop him. Within 1 year of arriving in America, at just 16, Larry Itliong joined his first labor strike. By 1930, he had helped co-found the Alaska Cannery Workers Union. He was a teenager organizing grown men to fight for their basic rights. Itliong taught himself law by reading books at night. He learned English, Spanish, Japanese, Cantonese, and 6 different Filipino dialects. He could not become a lawyer, so he became something else: a union organizer, a voice for workers who had nobody else to speak for them. Over the next 3 decades, Itliong organized workers across the American West, Alaska, Montana, Washington, and up and down California. He led the asparagus strike in Stockton in 1948. It was the first large-scale agricultural strike in America since the Second World War ended. In 1956, he founded the Filipino Farm Labor Union. Then, he helped establish the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee, known as the AWOC. But Itliong was not just fighting for better wages. He was fighting for dignity, for workers who were treated like animals, not human beings. To understand why, you need to understand Filipino workers of that era. They were called manongs, an Ilocano term meaning respected older brother. Most manongs came to America in the 1920s and 1930s. By 1965, they were in their 50s and 60s, aging, exhausted, running out of time, and almost all of them were alone. Because of anti-miscegenation laws, Filipinos could not legally marry white women in most American states, so they lived in labor camps. 20 or 30 men sharing one suit. Whoever had a date that night got to wear it. That was their reality. As one worker recalled, "When you live in a room for 20 years with no future, even a small raise is worth fighting and sacrificing for." These men had no families in America, no children, no retirement, no safety net. All they had was each other, and they had Larry Itliong. Itliong understood something crucial. The manongs could not wait. They did not have years to build a movement. They needed change right now. In May 1965, Itliong led Filipino workers in a strike at Coachella Valley. They wanted wages equal to what government-sponsored braceros got. After 10 days, the growers gave in. Wages went from $1.25 to $1.40 per hour, plus 25 cents per box. It was a victory. But when the harvest moved north to Delano, growers there refused to honor the same deal, so Itliong made his decision. September 7th, 1965, Filipino Community Hall in Delano, California. Hundreds of workers packed inside for an emergency meeting that night. Itliong had invited grape growers to negotiate. They did not show up. They thought the Filipinos would back down eventually. They were wrong. Itliong stood before the crowd. Filipino, Black, Arab, Puerto Rican, Mexican workers, all tired, all angry. He called for a strike vote. One by one, workers stood up in favor. The vote was unanimous. They would strike. The next morning, they would walk off the grape fields. September 8th, 1965, the sun rose over Delano, and more than 2,000 Filipino workers refused to pick a single grape that morning. Larry Itliong and Ben Gines led the picket lines. They demanded $1.40 per hour and 25 cents per box, same as Coachella, The growers laughed at them. They had a plan. They would simply replace Filipino workers with Mexican workers. They had done it many times. For 100 years, California growers used this tactic: divide workers by race, then break their strikes. It had never failed them before. Itliong knew this history well, so he did something unprecedented. He went to see César Chávez. He asked Mexican workers to join Filipinos. Chávez's response was no. He told Itliong his organization was not ready yet. They needed 2 or 3 more years to build their strength. Itliong pushed back hard. He said, "Maybe you can wait 2 or 3 years, but we cannot. The Filipinos are getting old. We have nowhere to go. Every penny, every dollar we fight for, we need that to retire. We need that to live our lives with dignity. We need to strike right now. And you are going to strike with us." Chávez did not agree immediately, but he agreed to put the question to his members for their own vote. September 16th, 1965, Mexican Independence Day. Over 1,000 NFWA members gathered at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church in Delano. Chávez spoke about joining Filipino workers, about standing together against the growers. The vote came back unanimous. They would join them. 8 days after Larry Itliong started the strike, César Chávez joined it. For the first time ever, Mexicans did not break a Filipino strike. They stood together on the same picket lines, ate in the same strike kitchen, slept in the same union hall, united against all the growers. As Itliong later wrote, "It was our Filipino people who started the strike. Then our Mexican brothers followed. This is the real beginning." The strike lasted 5 years. 5 brutal years of picketing, boycotts, marches, and sacrifice. Workers lost their jobs, lost their homes too. In 1966, the 2 unions merged to form the United Farm Workers. Chávez became director. Itliong became assistant director under his leadership. The UFW launched a nationwide grape boycott. They asked Americans to stop buying grapes until growers met their demands. And Americans listened. By 1969, 17 million Americans had stopped buying grapes. Grocery stores across the entire country removed grapes from their shelves. The growers were losing millions of dollars. Governor Reagan called boycotters barbarians. President Nixon tried shipping grapes to Vietnam. But on July 29, 1970, the growers finally gave in. 26 Delano grape growers signed historic contracts with the United Farm Workers. Workers won a raise to $1.80 per hour plus 20 cents per box. They got health insurance, pesticide protections, finally a voice. It was a historic victory, the first contracts between farm workers and growers in American history. A new era for labor rights had finally begun. But for Larry Itliong, victory came with a bitter taste. The union he helped create was changing in ways he did not like or agree with. Chávez saw the UFW as a social movement. Itliong saw it as a traditional trade union focused on workers. Their visions began to clash badly. Worse, Itliong felt the union was not doing enough for aging Filipino workers. The same Manongs who had started everything were being forgotten. In 1971, Larry Itliong resigned from the United Farm Workers. The man who started the movement walked away from the organization he built. His son Johnny later said, "Larry was militant. César was non-violent. César had handlers. César had lawyers. César was a dictator to workers." But Itliong never stopped fighting. He helped build a retirement village for Filipino farm workers. He organized workers until the day he died. On February 8, 1977, Larry Itliong died of Lou Gehrig's disease in Delano. He was 63 years old. he was buried in Delano soil. 16 years later, César Chávez died. The outpouring was enormous. 50,000 people attended his funeral. Presidents sent their tributes. Today, if you ask most Americans who started the Delano Grape Strike, they will say César Chávez. They have never heard of Larry Itliong. How did this happen? How did the man who started the strike become a footnote while the man who joined 8 days later became a legend? First, image. Chávez was the face journalists wanted. Peaceful, Gandhi-like, fasting for justice. He was perfect for magazine covers everywhere. Itliong was rough around the edges. He chewed cigars constantly. He cursed freely. He was militant and direct. He did not fit the narrative. Second, numbers. Mexican farm workers vastly outnumbered Filipinos. As the movement grew larger, Filipino founders became a much smaller voice. Third, timing. Itliong left the UFW in 1971. He was not there for the organization's greatest public triumphs. Chávez stayed until the end. Fourth, storytelling. The Mexican hero narrative was easier to tell. The multiracial coalition that actually started it was more complicated. As one historian put it, there would be no César Chávez without Larry Itliong. He was the guy doing all the dirty work behind the scenes. Another said, in the end, Larry probably should have been president of the Union, but he was not, and history always remembers the presidents. The numbers tell the story clearly. César Chávez has a national monument, 3 state holidays, a Navy ship, a bust in the Oval Office itself. Larry Itliong has 1 state observance day in California. Not even a holiday. No monument, no ship, no bust anywhere. Just 1 single day. Most history books mention Chávez and the UFW. They do not mention Itliong. They do not mention the Filipinos who made it all possible first. Some might ask, does it really matter who started it? The workers won. The movement succeeded. Why should we fight over credit now after all? It matters because history shapes how we understand the present. It shapes who we see as heroes. It shapes whose stories we choose to value. It matters because Filipino Americans, 4 million strong, rarely see themselves in American history books. Itliong's story could change that. It matters because the Delano Grape Strike was not just a Mexican movement. It was a multiracial coalition. That is what made it powerful. When Itliong convinced Chávez to join, he proved something essential. Divided, workers lose. United across racial lines, workers can finally win. That lesson remains relevant today. In 2023, over 400,000 American workers went on strike, across industries, across backgrounds, and it matters because Larry Itliong deserves to be remembered, not as a footnote, not as Chávez's assistant, but as a leader in his own right. A man who arrived in America at 15 with only a 6th grade education, who lost 3 fingers but never once lost his fighting spirit. A man who spent 40 years organizing workers nobody else would defend, who turned down $200,000 because he did not need it, who, when offered a bribe to support Chávez, said, "I can eat rice and squid and mango. I do not need your $200,000 at all." A man who believed what he said in 1976, "We are just as good as any of them. The Constitution says everybody has equal rights and justice." That man deserves more than 1 day in 1 state. He deserves to be remembered every single time we tell the story of the Grape Strike. Things are slowly changing now. In 2015, California made October 25th Itliong's birthday, an official Larry Itliong Day statewide. A middle school in Union City became the first school in America named after a Filipino American. The Itliong Vera Cruz Middle School opened. In 2018, a children's book about his life was published, Journey for Justice. In 2024, a musical about Itliong debuted in San Francisco too. California now requires schools to teach about Filipino-American contributions to the labor movement. Itliong will finally appear in textbooks. But there is still no national monument for Itliong, no federal holiday, no Navy ship, no bust in the Oval Office. Not yet. Maybe someday. Paul Chavez, Cesar's son, has acknowledged the truth. He said, "Of course there were hard feelings. Whose contributions would not be recognized?" He added, "We should now look to recognize these unsung heroes. Latinos and Filipinos alike, the next generation finally knows the real story." And now you know it too. You know that César Chávez did not start the Delano Grape Strike. A Filipino named Larry Itliong started it first. You know that when Chávez said no, Itliong convinced him to say yes. You know what those 8 days between September 8th and 16th mean. The question is, what do we do with that knowledge now? Do we let history keep forgetting, or do we finally start remembering the truth? Larry Itliong's story is one of millions of forgotten stories. Heroes erased because they did not fit the narrative. How many more are there? If you learned something today, share this video. Let us make sure the man who started it all finally gets the recognition he truly deserves.